Okay, so there's 5 main principles of surface design. The first one we're going to talk about is direct manipulation. So
right, and in many ways this is kind of an obvious one when you think about it, but unfortunately we don't always think about it. Direct manipulation as a principle is that we should be able to directly touch the things we want to interact with on the surface table. Now, when we work on a standard PC on a laptop or a vertical mounted screen, we don't typically have direct manipulation. We have this indirect manipulation with a mouse that you move the mouse and this little signal, 1s and 0s, go down the wire and they go to a computer and they move some cursor, so you move the mouse and some cursor moves on the screen. And it's a very indirect way of working. And you have the same with a keyboard. You tap on the keyboard, you put some instructions into the machine, and the machine does something. It's not direct, whereas with Surface you want to touch the thing you interact with, move it around. Now, there's some implications of direct manipulation that we don't see in typical UI. So the expectation of a user is as they touch something, the reaction is immediate. You know, when I pick something up, when I move something around, if I grab a cushion and move it around, it doesn't I don't move my hand and the cushion follows. Right? It's direct, it's immediate response. And so performance has to be a whole lot better. When you move something with the mouse cursor, if the cursor starts spinning and there's a weight, people have an acceptance of that. Whereas when you touch something on Surface or on a touch screen, the acceptance of delay is much, much lower. And we see that on phones as well, on mobile phones that have touch screens. The expectation is as you touch it, the reaction occurs immediately. So performance is really important.
Okay, great. The next design principle then is performance aesthetics. So
right, and so this is about not just creating function but also form. This is about making sure that what we build attracts, fascinates, draws in the user, but in a way that is performant, has performance criteria. So just being beautiful isn't good enough. You have to be beautiful and intelligent. That's kind of the bottom line of the software. Has to attract you in, but be simple, be quick to use, have that immediate response, but make me want to touch it. It can't just be something that you go, oh, that kind of looks nice, I don't want to touch it. And you'll see that, you'll see with, you can build something that looks beautiful, but is not necessarily something that draws you in to touch it. So, it's about both sides of it.
Okay, so the next principle is the principle of scaffolding. So
right.
How does that relate to design?
So scaffolding is the principle of, within the user experience, creating steps that build on top of each other. So as a user goes through the process of achieving a goal or doing something, or the users around the table are attempting to achieve something, the software should provide as much as it can to prevent the use or the number of, if you like, clicks or touches that are required to achieve the same goal. Right? So we can be smart about the software we build to lead people through a set of steps that build on their intelligence, or they learn how to use the software better without needing a manual, without having to go and read instructions. The scaffolding should provide everything that's required for a user to just walk up, start using the software, and build on the knowledge they already have, and then increase the knowledge that they have of using that software one step at a time.
Okay, great. So then that leads to the next one, which is contextual environments.
Right, and this is really important and something that we can't really do on most PC software, but we can do very well in Surface. In Surface we have what is essentially a fixed unit. It's not a mobile device by any stretch of the imagination. So if you put it into a location, you have some concept of the context of the location it's in. And you can be smart about the context of that location and the software that's running on it with reference to the type of people you expect to be using it. So if you put the Surface unit in a school, you expect within that context it's going to be used by students and teachers, and the software that you build that will run on that unit will be educational based software. If you put it in a hotel, you know the context that it's running in and the kind of people. There'll be tourists, there'll be travelers, and there'll be hotel staff that will be using it. So using that intelligence of knowing the context and then building your software to be contextually smart based on those types of people and the environment that it's in, there's a lot you can do.
Great. Okay, that makes sense. Now, the most exciting principle to me is the principle of superrealism.
Right.
What does that mean?
So giving your users superpowers, I guess, is really what it is. Although it's something that you need to be careful of, and it's something that we often take too far. So the principle of superreal says, you know, in the real world, you can't take a photo and stretch it and, you know, zoom in on it and things like you can do in a digital world. So we give our users superpowers. You know, the kind of canonical example is the Photos application, where they can stretch a photo, zoom into an area, etc. But you have to limit those superpowers. If you let them zoom forever, they'll get themselves lost and the photo will be so huge they'll never be able to get to anything underneath it. So you limit the maximum size of the photo and you limit the minimum size. You don't want the photo being, you know, squashed so small that it's 1 pixel by 1 pixel and no one can actually do anything with it. You can't even pick it up anymore. So you have to put boundaries on the superpowers. The other thing about super real is sometimes people try and create things that are very realistic. You know, they appear like they do in the real world, but actually doesn't work very well in the digital world. A really good example of that is when people try and create digital books with page turning. And so they have this beautiful animation, and you see this, there's Silverlight examples and WPF examples of, you know, you turn the page, and I'm sure, you know, there are people out there go, oh, it's so cool, it's so wonderful. But to get to information, it's a complete crock, it's crap, right? Essentially, the fastest way to get to information is to have an endless zoom. Right, and in digital world, we can create an endless zoom. We can create a page that is of infinite size. So why replicate a real world problem? In the real world, I can't physically put infinite amount of information on one page. And so we solved that with a real world hack, which is to create lots of pages, stick them together and print on both sides of them, right? Books and physical paper is kind of a real world solution to the problem that I can't put infinite information on a page. In a super world, in super real world, I can put infinite information on a page, so we can do that. So when I see someone create a paper, a replica, you know, a realistic book on Surface or on WPF or Silverlight, I kind of look at it and I go, that looks really nice, but actually it's a very poor experience for retrieving information.
Right, right.
And so, you know, what are you actually trying to enable the user to do is something you need to think about when you're creating these super real environments.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so those are the 5 principles. We'll work backwards. Super realism, you know, what we just discussed. What was the one we discussed before that? The contextual environment. So being contextually aware, performance aesthetics, making sure that, you know, what we do not just looks good but works well, has high performance, scaffolding, the ability to enable users to build on top of what they already know and then enhance their knowledge, and then direct manipulation, which I guess is the one we think of most when we think of Surface, because everyone thinks it's just a big touchscreen. But of course it's a lot more than that.
Right. Well, thank you for talking about us with us today about this.
You're welcome.
And we will talk again soon.
For sure.